Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take a look at a very OP team for the Open Great League with Noctowl Double Steel. I have showcased this type of team before. I'm not sure I've showed this exact team before, but it's basically Sableye, Noctowl, Pelipper or something like that on the lead, which can handle the fighting types and the mud boys, and then two steel types in the back, and really importantly Registeel as the safe swap, because then you can threaten shields from something like a Shadow Swampert or a Medicham, which comes in handy very often. I really like having something on the lead which can take a move from Medicham comfortably after Medicham comes out of the Registeel matchup. So I like Noctowl or like a Sableye, even a Pelipper can also do to some extent, but maybe not a Charizard or something like that, because if you don't get the Zap Cannon debuff with Registeel, yeah, that's not nice, having to take a Psychic from Medicham on Charizard. And then you can really use whatever you want in the back, that after you've lured out the fighting or the Mud Boy, you have like a Bastiodon or a Stunfisk. I haven't tried Bastiodon, obviously, because I hate Bastiodon, but I really like a Lowland Sandslash in this team. I tried it once again in my Worlds preparation, and it just worked really well, so I wanted to showcase it. I hope you enjoy the battles. Going into the first game, we lead into a Deoxys. Good lead, especially considering that this is where we want to see the fighting type. So we can go up to the Shadow Ball before they make it to a Thunderbolt after 8, and then go straight forward to either do big damage or grab a shield. And it does big damage to the Deoxys. Because we see the fighting type on the lead, we don't really need to save the Noctowl as much, so we can't just let this go. I was expecting the Thunderbolt, it was a Psycho Boost, and then they dip into a Noctowl. So I stay in to do some wing attack damage, load up an energy on Noctowl, and also wing attack their Noctowl into a range where we can lock on them into Zap Cannon range. If you just swap in Registeel immediately and the Noctowl has very good IVs, one Zap Cannon is not going to put them into a range where we can lock on them down before they get to 3 Shadow Balls to take out Registeel. So doing a little bit of wing attack damage before swapping out, as you can see, puts them into Zap Cannon range, or puts them into a range where we can now lock on them down after landing a Zap Cannon. I maybe should have undercharged it a little bit. I'm still practicing my undercharging with the Registeel, which can come in very handy. They bring in the Deoxys once again, but we have enough energy to threaten them, and if I counted correctly, this is not a Thunderbolt. So we can take the Psycho Boost, overfarm quite a lot, and then go for the Zap Cannon. I wanted to bring my Registeel as low as possible, just because I think that's a good habit, but my switch timer is up, so it doesn't really matter. So they bring in a Shadow, a Lowland, Ninetales. We can bring in the Shadow, a Lowland Sandslash. These charms are hurting a lot, but I looked this matchup up before playing, and Shadow Lowland Sandslash can win the 2-shield straight drill run, even if the Shadow Lowland Ninetales gets a charm breakpoint. So we can go straight for the drill run, they let it go, and then they concede the match. Next game, lead into a Tapu Fini, generally a good matchup for Noctowl, especially in the zero shields. So my plan is to go up to 2 Sky Attacks, throw both of them, just let the Surf go, because they didn't even load up to the Moonblast. It takes the equivalent of 10 wing attacks for the Moonblast, 7 for the first Surf. So we can go for the first Sky Attack, then go for the second Sky Attack to either take them out or grab a shield before swapping into Registeel. So this should give us some sort of advantage. It just takes out the Tapu Fini, and then I was gonna swap out to lure out the Medicham, but they just bring in the Medicham, which makes me think that they might be weak to Noctowl in the back, but also I can't really swap out, because if I swap out into Registeel here and they also swap out, I have my Lowland Sandslash on the Medicham. Of course, this is not an ideal situation that they just counter Noctowl all the way down. I don't really want my Registeel to get very low. I have to shield up something at some point with Registeel in this matchup, so I decided to shield up the first one, because Medichams generally don't bait a Registeel, but they do make it to another Psychic before we can make it to the first Zap Cannon. They even get the defense drop, which is really unfortunate. We get to the Zap Cannon, does big damage, and then they bring in a Sableye, and I react way too slowly. Bring in the Shadow Lowland Sandslash. If we brought it in 1 Shadow Claw after they brought in Sableye, we would have been able to outpace them here, so we could have shielded this up. But now they're just going to be able to get to 2 Fire Plays way before we can get to 2 moves. So I know I'm going to have to take 1. Hope that I can get to an Ice Punch and a Drill Run after taking that. But no, we can only make it to 2 Ice Punches. And as you're going to see here, this is simply not enough to take out the Sableye. They come out with a lot of energy. I only have 1 shield. They are 2 away from back-to-back Foul Play. So I just concede the match by letting the Foul Play go. Not my best game, not gonna lie. Next game, lead into an Azumarill. Not the same as Tapu Fini, because this is obviously a lot more bulky. So what I like to do here is try and catch a move. So we load up a lot over the Ice Beam, and then we catch the Ice Beam on Registeel. And a bit of a random time, it is the Ice Beam, very nice. And we also lure out the Medicham Very, very nice. We can make it to the Zap Cannon before they make it to the Psychic because we got in one lock on the catch, which is very nice. Usually these two pace at the same rate, and we get the attack drop, which is also very nice. Actually, a very huge attack drop because after taking that Ice Beam, one Psychic without the attack drop plus the counters would have been enough to take me out before we got to this Zap Cannon, but because we got that attack drop, we can get to another Zap Cannon to force the shield from Medicham, which is very nice. Now we have 2 attack drops, so these Ice Punches are gonna do basically nothing. I was expecting them to throw immediately because they know I have a lot of energy, so instead I decided to not throw immediately because I know Noctowl usually loses CMP here, overfarm a little bit, and then go for the Sky Attack to take out the Medicham, come up with a lot of energy on Noctowl. So we can overfarm a little bit more and then go for another Sky Attack. And then a little bit optimistically, I'm gonna try and catch another Ice Beam on another Steel type, but this time they don't let it happen. Instead they swap into Venusaur and realize they have no chance of winning the game. So that's a GG. Next game, lead into a Noctowl. Again, I like to try and catch a move here on a bit of a random time. So I try to catch after 8 and once again I get a little bit lucky. And we catch a Sky Attack on Registeel once again. And then they bring in a Quagsire, which is really not what I wanted to see. So we can overfarm quite a lot because we're going to have to take one move regardless. So I overfarm to try and make it as difficult for my opponent to keep track of counts. But I do have to throw this Foul Play before they make it to another Mud Bomb. It is 5 for the first, 4 for the second. So we throw it right before they get there. And then they can overfarm quite a lot with this Quagsire. I think they overfarmed to almost a Mud Bomb and a Stone Edge. It is 5-4 for Mud Bombs and then 6 for the Stone Edge. So we have to go for the Sky Attack immediately because they were 1 away from the Stone Edge if we want to take them out before they get there. But we grab the shield instead. And now I'm going to have to make a call here. But I'm thinking even if it's the Stone Edge, it doesn't take me out. So I'm still getting to the Sky Attack. And then I have a shield advantage for Lowland Sandslash, which would be nice. So I just call it, and it is the Mud Bomb, and then we can take out the Quagsire afterwards, bring in the Alolan Sandslash on the Noctowl, but unfortunately, it's a Medicham in the back. And spoiler alert, if they have 2 fighters, 2 Mud Boys, or 2, like 1 of each, it's very difficult to overcome a team like that, especially when they save the Medicham for the Alolan Sandslash. Fun fact here though, I shield up these Ice Punches, a Sky Attack from a Noctowl, despite being like not super effective, still does more damage than an Ice Punch from a Medicham on a Noctowl, despite the Ice Punch being super effective. So I should have actually saved my shield for the Sky Attack from Noctowl. It does about 31%, whereas the Ice Punch does about 30%. So it is negligible, but just fun fact, I guess. We take out the Medicham, and then we realize the Noctowl simply has too much health remaining. I try to make it to the back-to-back Sky Attack because I definitely need at least 2 of them, but then they just wing attack us down, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into Warface, yikes, swap into Registeel, and they respond with a Victory Bell. If we can call 2 Leaf Blades, we can win the 2 shield scenario here if we shield twice and then get shield switch advantage, but if they go Acid Spray, we lose the 2 shield scenario. But if we win the 2 shield scenario, Shadow Alolan Sandslash cannot overcome the Bastiodon. So what I would recommend here is, if they, like usually if it's this team, they usually swap in Medicham if they have it on the Registeel, and then they like save the Victory Bell for later. So I would recommend, like if they bring in the Medicham, you can just sweep with Shadow Alolan Sandslash in the back, especially if you save 2 shields for it. If it's the Victory Bell, of course. But if they bring in the Victory Bell, you just kind of have to hope that there is another Razor Leaf in the back, because obviously if it's Medicham, we're going to lose this game. But if we go down 2 shields with Registeel, trying to call 2 Leaf Blades, the Bastiodon is also just going to beat the Shadow Alolan Sandslash in the 0 shield scenario. Luckily, it was another Razor Leafer, so we do overcome it. And that is another good game. Next game, lead into a Surf Edge. We want to throw right before they get to a Brave Bird as they're staying in. So we go for the Sky Attack after 7, takes 8 for the Brave Bird, and then they go for a move immediately. I simply cannot risk letting my Noctowl go here, because then I just get, like my entire team just gets counted down. So I shield up the Brave Bird, and once again they bring in a Noctowl, and once again I'm going to stay in a little bit. I try to catch the Sky Attack as well, but my main objective really was to just load up some energy on Noctowl and also put their Noctowl into a range where I only have to throw 1 move with the Registeel. They can make it to 2 Shadow Balls before we make it to the Zap Cannon because I overfarmed so much with Noctowl. But we should still be able to make it to the Zap Cannon. We can't just let both of those Shadow Balls go and then go for the Zap Cannon. I even try to undercharge it a little bit, but it actually shielded up, which I think is a pretty smart play because, as you're going to see later, it puts me in a bit of a tough spot as they go for this third Shadow Ball, which we have to shield. We have to keep switch advantage, of course. And then their switch timer comes up because I stayed in a little bit longer with my Noctowl. Their switch timer comes up before mine, so I cannot swap into Noctowl before they counter my Registeel down. So I have to throw the move into the Surf Edge. So now they bring back in the Noctowl, we can bring in the Shadow Lowland Sandslash. I didn't want to let them farm me down, and also they're switch locked at this point because they swapped out into the Surf Edge. So we can bring in the Shadow Lowland Sandslash, and they let me get to the second Ice Punch, leaving my Shadow Lowland Sandslash energy dry. So now they can bring something in, like a Medicham, to farm me all the way down. My opponent is really playing this well, but luckily we do make it to an Ice Punch to put the Medicham low, under 50% health. As I said, the Ice Punch, they loaded up to 6 counters, so even if they throw the Ice Punch, it only does about 30%. The Sky Attack from Noctowl does about 50%, so we can just bring it in safely, go for the Sky Attack to take out the Medicham, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into a Medicham, and they're staying in. This is generally a good matchup for Noctowl, of course, but Medicham does win the Zero Shields, so we do need to be aware of that. I generally like to catch the second Ice Punch if they're staying in. This time around, they go for the Ice Punch, and then usually people no-shield this Sky Attack because they know they can live it and then get to another Ice Punch. But then they just shield it. I was planning on shielding my Noctowl as well. I didn't want to CMP tie the Medicham because, again, Medicham usually wins it. They try to catch the Sky Attack on a Steelix of all things. So we bring in Shadow Lowland Sandslash, go for the Drill Run, and then they get up to 8 Dragon Tails, meaning this can be an Earthquake. I cannot afford to lose switch advantage, so I shield it up. It's a Psychic Fangs, but it's still 8 for the Earthquake. If they land 2 Psychic Fangs, it's 7 for the Earthquake afterwards, but we can go up to 8 and then go for the Ice Punch on CMP to come out with a lot of energy after taking out the Steelix with Shadow Lowland Sandslash. And then they bring back in the Medicham. We can make it to the Drill Run, which is of course the move you want to go for if you only make it to 1. And it does big damage to the Medicham. So much damage, in fact, that I can bring in my Registeel to absorb the energy instead of bringing in Noctowl, because it's so low at this point. And then we can lock on them all the way down. I don't know what my opponent was doing there, why they didn't swap out, but we lock on them all the way down and they concede the match, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into a Sableye. They swap into a Stunfisk, and again, I'm a little bit too slow on the swap. If you swap within 1 Mud Shot, if you only give them 1 Mud Shot's advantage, you will be able to make it to 3 Drill Runs before they make it to 2 Rock Slides and an Earthquake, meaning you will be able to safely win the 2-shield scenario. But because I was a little bit too slow, I also go for the bait, which I really should not be going for. Because I was a little bit too slow, I have to call a bait, and we did call it correctly, so now we should still be able to keep switch advantage, which is pretty nice when there's a Sableye in the lead. We can shield this up. We could also no-shield it, because then we have 2 shields of an advantage. But I shield up both of these Rock Slides just to keep Noctowl onto the Sableye. And because we called the first Rock Slide, we will be able to get to the Drill Run before they make it to the Rock Slide. We wait a turn right before they get to this Rock Slide, and then we go for the Drill Run to take out the Stunfisk, and we keep switch advantage, which is very nice. They bring back in the Sableye, they only get 1 Shadow Claws advantage. We bring in Noctowl, they bring in Lantern, and very lucky that we kept switch advantage because it's a Lantern in the back. In the 2-shield scenario, Spark Lantern can overcome Registeel, but in the 0 shields, 2 Zap Cannons or 2 moves from Registeel just in general are enough to take out the Lantern, and the Lantern needs some Spark damage in order to have 2 moves KO the Registeel, so they can make it to another Thunderbolt here, but it's simply not enough to take out Registeel, and we will be able to make it to another move before they make it to the Surf to take out Registeel. So we make it to the Focus Blast, and they should take out the Lantern, but our switch timer is not up, so the Sableye might be able to farm us down, but they're just about not able to. We do make it to the Zap Cannon, and this will do big damage to the Sableye, and we even get the attack drop as well. Now we can bring in the Noctowl, go for the Sky Attack, and this will of course take out the Sableye, but actually not, because my opponent conceded in the middle of my charge move, which is very nice by the opponent. Next game lead into a bit of a core breaker. We can't really bring in Registeel onto this because Registeel has a very bad 2-shield matchup against it. So I decided to stay in and hope to catch, to grab a shield, because they must be thinking, a Shadow Ball does quite a bit, and if I'm staying in with a Noctowl, I must be weak to this thing. So we do grab a shield advantage, and then we bring in the Registeel, which is still not an ideal situation because 2 drill runs are enough to take out the Registeel. They overfarm a little bit here. It takes 665 for the drill runs, and then they go for the second one, which we can shield up. And then they try to catch a move on Cofagrigus. We don't throw the Focus Blast. Instead, we go for the Zap Cannon. But my opponent here, very, very nice play by them. They could have gone for a move to take out Registeel before I make it to the Shadow Zap Cannon. Instead, they realized that I'm weak to Shadow Lord and Sandslash since I stayed in with the Noctowl in the beginning. So they let their Cofagrigus go down and leave my Registeel in farm range for the Alolan Sandslash. I do not want to get farmed down. I think that's just game over, and I don't think I'm making it to a move with the Registeel. So I actually swap in my Noctowl onto the Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and then I make a mistake. I thought they were at the back-to-back Ice Punches. I miscounted in the game, so I let them get to another Ice Punch. I didn't want to throw in CMP, so I just let them get there instead, and yeah, now we have to shield up the Ice Punch. We can make it to a Shadow Ball. I bait with the Sky Attack, and they call it, so we have to throw another Sky Attack right before they get to a Ice Punch to take out this Alolan Sandslash. Now what do they have in the back? They have a Frostlass in the back. This is not ideal. They let us get to a Shadow Ball before taking us out, which will of course grab the shield, but now they're at 7. I have 7 Powder Snows. I could swap out here into Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and then it takes 13 for the Shadow Ball plus Avalanche, which is what they need to take out the Shadow Lord and Sandslash, and it takes 6 for the drill run, meaning I would be able to outpace the Frostlass if I swap out here. But I wanted to keep my switch timer open, and I make a mistake by letting my Noctowl go down, because now they make it to the Shadow Ball, and now they're 2 away from the Avalanche, and Frostlass does win CMP in this matchup, and it will take out Shadow Lord and Sandslash, so I have to catch the Avalanche on Registeel. But now it's going to come down to, can my opponent undercharge this perfectly? If they can come out with an Avalanche before we get to the Focus Blast, they will be able to take out Shadow Lord and Sandslash. But we just about make it to the Focus Blast with Registeel to take out the Frostlass with 1 HP and a Dream on the Registeel. Very, very close game. Next game, lead into a Noctowl. Once again, I like to try and catch a move on my Steel type. On Registeel, of course. But this time, they go for the Sky Attack immediately, which I wasn't really predicting. I guess that's a pretty good spot to throw. So, this is the part of the video where I struggle to speak more than I usually do. Bring in the Registeel, save a lot of energy on Noctowl, and then they bring in a Trevenant of all things. I haven't seen this in a while. We can make it to a Zap Cannon before they make it to the Shadow Ball, but they will be able to make it to 2 Shadow Balls before we make it to another Zap Cannon. And they very smartly realize they don't want to leave their Trevenant in farm range for whatever I have in the back, or like for Noctowl or Shadow Lord and Sandslash. So instead they undercharge the Shadow Ball to give me switch advantage, which I don't. I mean, it's nice for me to get Shadow Lord and Sandslash onto Noctowl, but it's like I don't really want the Noctowl to farm me all the way down here, so I actually bring in my Noctowl once again after taking out the Trevenant. And then we go for the move on a potential CMP to see who wins CMP, which I usually do with my IVs, but it's nice to know, of course. They can make it to a Sky Attack. We let it go. Usually I like to save my shields for Shadow Lord and Sandslash. They load up some energy on Noctowl, and then they bring in Azumarill. I think I can make it to 2 Sky Attacks. Looking at the bubble damage, we go for the first one, but we can't quite make it to the second one. Now we can bring in Shadow Lord and Sandslash. Of course, take 6 for the Play Rough. They go for the Play Rough immediately, which means this is not a Hydro Pump, but I still don't really want to take it. I want to save 1 shield for the Noctowl, but I also want to shield the first move because Azumarill is just not baiting. I make a very silly bait here. I was so sure that they would shield it. Usually I don't like making these very high risk, low reward baits, which I think this is, but I was just so sure they were going to shield it. They no shield it. So we can no shield their Play Rough, take it pretty comfortably, and then go for another Ice Punch after overloading a lot on energy. The Noctowl still has energy from earlier, so they will be able to outpace my Shadow Lord and Sandslash. I have to just try and catch it at some time. I go up to when they're at the back-to-back Sky Attacks, and then we catch the first Sky Attack on Registeel, but Alolan Sandslash is still so low in the back. We have to hope we can make it to 2 Ice Punches. We make it to the first one. This will, of course, grab the shield from Noctowl. Alolan Sandslash is so low, but the Azumarill is also so low. We make it to the second Ice Punch before the Wing Attack takes us out. Now, the Shadow Claw will register before the bubble, so we take out the Azumarill as well with the Shadow Lord and Sandslash, and that is another 1 HP and a dream. Next game, leading to another Steel type, we swap into Registeel, and they swap into Medicham, which is pretty nice. They go for a move after 5, meaning this can only be a power-up punch, and this is actually an IV-dependent matchup I found. If you have very good IVs in your Registeel, with 2 lock-ons advantage, you will be able to win the Zero Shields even against a pop Medicham. But if you have raid IVs on your Registeel, you won't, because the counters after the Medicham is ramping up with the power-up punches will be enough to take out the Registeel before it makes it to the second Zap Cannon. My opponent decides to play it safe, and instead of going for pops, they just decide to come out with a lot of energy and shield up their Medicham, but this is absolutely fine by me, because now we have a shield advantage for Shadow Lord and Sandslash, which once the fighting type is gone, Shadow Lord and Sandslash does very well with the shield advantage. They can make it 2-2 sidekicks to bring my Noctowl very low. I'm just gonna let them both go, get to the Shadow Ball with my Noctowl against this Registeel, to put them into a range where we can Shadow Claw them into Dual Run range, and then we bring in Shadow Lord and Sandslash, and in the back, it's an Altaria. And we can just, the opponent knows they're not going to win that game, so they concede. And that was actually a 10-game win streak with this team. I got 2 5-0s in a row with this team towards the end of the day, and that brought me all the way up to a new elo peak. Very nice. That was the last battle for today, and overall I'm really enjoying these types of teams with something good against Mud Boys and Fighters in the lead and then 2 steals in the back. They always work out very well for me. I forgot to mention in the beginning that this team can struggle a lot against steel types on the lead or steel types on the safe swap. I hope that I showcase well enough how you can play against steel types on the lead, but against something like a Registeel on the safe swap, I would suggest you are very quick with swapping in Shadow Lord and Sandslash, because unless they have very good IVs in their Registeel, as in very good IVs, you will be able to beat it in the 2 shields going straight Drill Run with Shadow Lord and Sandslash, as long as you don't give it too much of a head start on energy. As in, you need to be quite quick. Also against the Stunfisk, same thing. If you're quick, you can beat it. Other than that, fun fact of the day, Azumarill, a very defense-weighted Azumarill, can not only get a bulk point on Noctowl, which makes that matchup a lot better, but it also gets a bulk point on Shadow Lord and Sandslash, which allows it to beat it in the Zero Shield scenario, straight play rough, which I cannot recommend a very defense-weighted Azumarill enough. It is so good in Open Great League. Other than that, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel. And of course, a massive thank you to the members of the channel. Your support is very much appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.